Imagine you're holding a book, a very old book, so old that it was written before the first cell appeared on Earth, before oceans, before light. This book contains instructions, not for building a house or baking bread, but for building you. Every organ, every thought, every emotion you've ever felt. And here's the part that will blow your mind. Some pages of this book haven't changed in 3 billion years. That's not a metaphor. That's biology. Today we're going to talk about something that science is only beginning to understand, something that philosophers have whispered about for centuries, and something that might completely change the way you see yourself. We're going to talk about the memory inside your DNA, why your genes seem to remember something ancient, something sacred, something that some researchers are starting to call, in very careful language, heaven. Stay with me because this goes deep. Your body is made of approximately 37 trillion cells. Each one of those cells contains your complete genetic code. If you stretched out all the DNA from just one cell, it would reach about 2 meters. Now multiply that by 37 trillion. The DNA inside your body, if laid end to end, would reach the sun and back over 300 times. You are, in the most literal sense, a universe folded into human skin. But here's what gets strange. Scientists studying the genome, your full genetic instruction manual, discovered something they weren't expecting. Large portions of your DNA don't seem to do anything. For decades, researchers called this junk DNA. They assumed it was evolutionary garbage, leftover code from millions of years of trial and error. Then they looked closer, and what they found changed everything. That so-called junk DNA isn't junk at all. It's a library, a vast, ancient library that stores information about every environment your ancestors ever lived in, every disease they survived, every trauma they endured, every moment of joy, fear, starvation, and love. It's all encoded in patterns that your genes still carry today. This is the science of epigenetics, one of the most profound discoveries in the history of human biology. Epigenetics means above the genes. It's the study of how your experiences, your environment, your emotions can actually change the way your genes express themselves. Not the genes themselves. The genes stay the same. But which ones turn on and which ones stay silent? That changes. And here's the part that rewrites history. Those changes can be passed down to your children, and their children, and their children's children. Your grandmother's fear lives in your body. Your great-grandfather's resilience lives in your body. Then those children had children. Same fear, same smell. 3 generations of inherited terror from an experience that happened to their grandfather. When scientists examined the brains of these mice, they found that the area responsible for detecting that specific smell was physically enlarged. The body had built extra hardware to handle a threat it had never personally experienced, because somewhere in its ancient code, the memory was still alive. Now scale that up to humans. We've been carrying memories for hundreds of thousands of years. And here is where it gets philosophical, where the science starts to touch something that feels almost spiritual. Many traditions across history, from ancient Egyptian priests to Hindu mystics to Kabbalistic scholars to indigenous shamans, describe the soul not as something that lives in the body, but as something that the body remembers. They spoke of a divine blueprint, a perfect version of the human being that existed before birth and continues after death, a kind of cosmic original that the physical form is trying to replicate. Modern geneticists don't use the word soul, but some of them are using a word that comes very close. They're talking about what they call the morphogenetic field, a concept first proposed by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, which suggests that living organisms are shaped not just by their DNA, but by invisible fields of information that extend beyond the physical body. Fields that carry form, fields that carry memory, fields that connect individual organisms to something larger than themselves. Sheldrake called it morphic resonance, the idea that the patterns of the past, not just genetic patterns, but behavioral patterns, emotional patterns, even thought patterns, resonate forward through time and influence the present. That nature itself has a kind of memory. That is when you learn something. You make it slightly easier for every human being who comes after you to learn the same thing. This is controversial, very controversial. Mainstream science pushes back hard on Sheldrake. But here's the thing, the pushback is getting quieter. Because the more we learn about epigenetics, about quantum biology, about the way information moves through living systems, the more the sharp line between science and mysticism blurs. Because if your grandmother's trauma is in your cells, if a mouse's grandfather's fear shapes the architecture of its brain, if the experiences of ancestors you never met are actively influencing your health, your anxiety levels, your immune response, your emotional patterns, then what exactly is the difference between memory and soul? What if they are the same thing? Let's go even deeper. In 2019, a team of researchers at the University of California made a discovery that shocked the scientific community. They found that human DNA contains sequences that are essentially identical to sequences found in organisms that lived over 1 billion years ago. Not similar, identical. As if certain instructions are so fundamental, so perfect, that evolution never touched them. As if something decided, long before humans existed, this part doesn't change. This part is sacred. These ultra-conserved elements, that's what scientists call them, appear in almost every complex organism on Earth. They're in fish. They're in insects. They're in plants. They're in you. And for 1 billion years, give or take, they haven't changed at all. Why? Why would 1 billion years of mutation, selection pressure, extinction events, climate shifts, and evolutionary chaos leave certain genetic sequences completely untouched? One answer is practical. These sequences are so critical to basic survival that any mutation is immediately fatal. So they never survive long enough to spread. The code is perfect. Any deviation destroys the organism. But there's another way to look at it. What if these sequences are a message? What if deep inside your DNA, woven into the most ancient and untouchable parts of your genome, there is information that came from somewhere else? Not from Earth's evolutionary history, but from something before it? Something that encoded the basic architecture of life before life even began? This is the theory of Panspermia, the idea that life, or the building blocks of life, arrived on Earth from space. It's no longer a fringe idea. NASA scientists have found amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, in meteorites. They've found complex organic molecules in the clouds of distant galaxies. The chemistry of life, it turns out, is not unique to Earth. It is everywhere, which means your DNA might carry a memory not just of Earth, but of the cosmos. You are, quite literally, made of stardust. And some of that stardust remembers where it came from. Now, let's talk about resurrection. Not in the religious sense, though we'll touch on that too. In the scientific sense, epigenetic damage is real. The traumas, the toxins, the stress, the processed food, the sleepless nights, the unprocessed grief, all of these things leave marks on your epigenome. They don't change your DNA, but they change which parts of your DNA are active. They can silence genes that should be speaking. They can amplify genes that should be quiet. Over time, this creates what researchers call epigenetic dysregulation, a kind of static in the signal, noise drowning out the original code. And here's what's extraordinary. The original code is still there. Under all that noise, under all that damage, under all those inherited fears, environmental scars, and generational wounds, the perfect blueprint is still intact. The ultra-conserved sequences are still there. The ancient instructions are still there. The original version of you, or something very close to it, is still encoded in every single cell of your body. So the question becomes, how do you wake it up? How do you resurrect the original signal? Scientists are finding answers, and they're coming from surprising places. Meditation, not as a spiritual practice, but as a measurable biological intervention. Studies show that long-term meditators have longer telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that are associated with longevity and cellular health. They show reduced methylation on stress response genes. In plain language, meditation literally changes the way your DNA is expressed. It quiets the noise. It lets the original signal come through. Fasting. Intermittent fasting and extended fasting trigger a process called autophagy, cellular self-cleaning. Damaged proteins get recycled. Dysfunctional mitochondria get replaced. Epigenetic markers that have accumulated through years of stress and poor lifestyle start to reset. The body, given space and silence, begins to remember how to run the original code. Cold exposure. The Wim Hof method and similar practices activate ancient genetic pathways that were suppressed by modern comfort. Your body has genes that help it survive extreme cold. It has genes for generating heat through sheer mental focus. Most people never activate those genes in their entire lives. But they're there, waiting, ready. Nature immersion. Forest bathing, spending time in natural environments, has been shown to reduce cortisol, boost NK cell activity, your immune system's assassins, and alter gene expression in ways that promote healing and reduce inflammation. There are genes in your body that were shaped over millions of years of living in forests. When you return to that environment, something in your DNA recognizes it. Something ancient wakes up. Sound. This one is fascinating. Research in the field of cymatics, the study of how sound shapes matter, shows that certain frequencies cause physical matter to arrange itself into complex, geometric patterns. The solfeggio frequencies, ancient tonal scales used in sacred music, have been studied for their effects on DNA. Some researchers claim that 528 Hz, the so-called love frequency, actually promotes DNA repair. The science is early and contested, but it rhymes with something older. Every major spiritual tradition on Earth has used sound, chant, prayer, and music as tools for healing. Maybe they knew something. And then there's love. Not romantic love specifically, though that's part of it, but the biochemistry of human connection, of belonging, of being truly seen and held by another person, has profound effects on gene expression. Loneliness, by contrast, activates inflammatory genes and suppresses immune response at the genetic level. Your DNA responds to love. It responds to isolation. It knows the difference, and it acts accordingly. So when ancient traditions said that love was the fundamental force of the universe, they weren't being poetic. They were describing a biological reality that we're only now able to measure. Here is the synthesis of everything we've talked about. You are a physical body. You are also an ancient archive. You carry within you the memory of every organism that ever lived and survived long enough to reproduce. You carry the marks of every trauma your ancestors endured. You carry the resilience of every challenge they overcame. And woven through all of that, in the deepest, most protected layers of your genome, you carry something else. Something that has never changed. Something that evolution never touched. Something that arrived on this planet billions of years ago and has been faithfully preserved ever since. Call it what you want. Some call it the soul. Some call it the divine blueprint. Some call it cosmic information. Science calls them ultra-conserved elements, morphogenetic fields, and epigenetic memory. But whatever you call it, it's in you, right now, and it can be woken up. The code of immortality isn't a fantasy. It's not a metaphor. It's not wishful thinking. It's in your cells, in the part of your DNA that hasn't changed since before the dinosaurs, in the ancestral memories that shape your instincts, in the potential locked inside every gene that stress and trauma and modern life have pushed into silence. The work of your life, if you choose to accept it, is to peel back the noise, to clear the static, to let the original signal come through stillness, through nature, through honest human connection. Through the courage to face what your ancestors couldn't finish processing and to finally let it heal. Because when you do that, when you begin to live in alignment with your deepest code, something extraordinary happens. You don't just feel better. You don't just get healthier. You start to remember something. Something you can't quite name. A sense that you've been here before. That you know more than you've been taught. That beneath the personality and the biography and the ego, there is something ancient and unbreakable and luminous. That is your DNA remembering heaven. And that is the beginning of resurrection. So here's my question for you. What do you think is encoded in your genes that you haven't yet accessed? What ancient strength, what inherited gift, what forgotten wisdom might be sleeping inside your own code, waiting for you to find the key? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video made you think, if it opened something in you, If even one idea landed and shifted something, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, because we go this deep every single time. This is not just a philosophy channel. This is a place where science, spirit, and the search for meaning come together. And we're just getting started.